Okay, we're back. Okay, and the board's not up. What happened to my board? Hello? Hello? Where's my board? Yeah, there we are. Okay. Boom. This is what we're talking about. Okay. Hi, hello. Back at it again. It says Womb Wednesday cycle chat, but I definitely did put Venus Day cycle chat in there, and it's just not saying that. So, hi, hello, Rainbow Unico. Okay, Rainbow Unico. I am a women's health educator, and I have been for the last 7 years, and I teach women to tell time by the moon and their womb. Okay, that's what we're going to be talking about. I was literally on here a second ago, and I couldn't figure out how to change this thing. So I want to know what cycle day you're on. What cycle day are you on? What phase of your cycle are you in? What season are you in? What phase of the moon do you start your period with? Okay, because that's the vibes we're on. I started my period 6 days after the new moon in Cancer, currently on cycle day 13. Okay, that divine feminine energy coming through with that 13. And today's the 31st, and I thought it was really cute. It's like a little flip around, so super cute. We love that. So what cycle day are you on? What phase of the moon do you bleed with? I'm curious, and I would love to know. On my page, we talk everything women's health. I am blending together the sacred feminine, the science behind women's health, and the spiritual aspect of it all, the emotional aspect, the mental, okay, the energetic, all of it, okay? That is what we're talking about here. So we're going to talk about telling time by the moon and your womb and your period and your ovulation, okay? So I have my calendar back here that it's a dry erase calendar, okay? And I always start it with the new moon. So the cycle is literally the cycle of the new moon, whatever new moon cycle we're starting, that is what starts my calendar. And then the phases of my cycle are also on there. So each phase of my cycle has a different color. So the luteal phase is purple. The menstrual phase is red, the follicular phase is green, and the ovulation phase is blue. So that is how I set up my calendar. That's how I know where I am. That's how I plan my life and align my life to my cycle and to the moon. Because if you're not doing that as a woman, what are you doing? You're living like a tiny version of a man. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to live like a tiny version of a man. Society is literally feeding us all the time that we are a tiny version of a man. Hold on, let me sign out of work real quick. Let me log out for the day. But society is literally always telling us, in the way that we get nutritional advice, the way that we get exercise advice, the way that we get medical research, it's all done on men. It's all based on men and men's bodies and their consistent 24-hour cycle that they go through, okay? Men's hormones do not fluctuate like ours do, okay? Their hormones go through a fluctuation within a 24-hour period, and our hormones fluctuate on a 28, 29, however long your cycle is, cycle with the moon, okay? It's called the infradian rhythm. You ever heard that before? Have you heard about the infradian rhythm? Let me know if that's a term that you've heard before or if you're curious to learn more. Okay, let me know what questions you have about your cycle. I want to answer those questions for you. I want to talk about that with you. I want to connect with you and kind of see where you are in the landscape of understanding your body as a woman. Because we are not taught enough about our bodies. We're not taught enough about our cycles. We're not taught enough about how to literally live our life based on the infradian rhythm, the lunar cycle, okay? Living our life as women with cycles, okay? Because we are taught that, oh, we just have to push through. The period is nothing. You can just continue on with your day. You want to go outside, babies? You can just continue on with your life. It's nothing that you have to plan for. It's nothing that you have to plan around. It's nothing that you have to, shift or change around your energy, your day, your life for. Even though this is literally your life force energy, okay? And you should absolutely be changing things around, planning around it, planning with it, planning for it, okay? Aligning yourself with it. That is something that we should be doing as women, but we just don't do enough. So, if you're joining, hello. Hi, Thomas. Hi, Thomas. Sweet little outside kitty cat. A sweet little outside kitty cat. He's a little feral, so he tries to eat my fingers, but that's okay. And then my big old baby. My big old baby. Oh, my big old baby. Hello. If you are joining, this is our topic. So if you don't want to talk about that, get on out of here. Okay. We are talking about living by the moon and your cycle, okay? Living by the moon and your cycle, planning by the moon and your cycle, telling time by the moon and your cycle. Because as a woman, if you are not planning your life around your cycle, what are you doing? What are you really doing? If you're jumping in here, let me know what cycle day you're on, where in your cycle you are. Are you ovulating? Are you on your period? Are you in your luteal phase? Do you even know where you are? Okay, what questions do you have about your cycle? What questions do you have about being cyclical? About living by the moon? About living by your cycle? Okay, what questions do you really have? I want to know. I want to help. I want to talk about it. I'm currently on cycle day 13. Okay, that divine feminine energy is strong with this one. Okay, strong with this one. What cycle day are you on? Hello, Karen J. What cycle day are you on? Where are you in your cycle? Where are you in your phases of life? Are you going through perimenopause? Are you shifting into menopause? Are you postpartum? Are you pregnant? Are you newly a cyclical being? Have you just gotten your first period? Let's talk about it, okay? If you're a man, what are you doing here? Why are you here? This is not for you, okay? You cannot live by the moon and your cycle because you live on a 24-hour cycle with the sun. It never changes. You never change. You're always the same, okay? Women have a 28, 29, 30, however long your cycle is, that is your cycle, okay? There is nothing wrong with how long your cycle is unless it is extremely long. Okay, like more than 40 days, we have a problem there, ladies. Okay, and that's something that we need to get looked at. We need to get checked. We need to get some insight on. Okay, bleeding for longer periods of time can usually be a progesterone issue, a low progesterone issue, or an excess estrogen issue. So that's something that we really want to pay attention to. And sometimes bumping up our progesterone can actually be super helpful. Hello, Jazz. Thank you for joining. Thank you for liking the live. Super appreciate it. What cycle day are you on? Where are you in your cycle? I'm currently on cycle day 13. Okay, brimming with that divine feminine energy. What cycle day are you on? What phase of your cycle are you in? Do you even know? And what questions do you have? Because that is what we are talking about today. We're talking about living your life by the moon and your cycle. Okay, planning around the moon and your cycle. If you missed it, at the beginning of the live, I showed my dry erase calendar where I literally start the calendar every single month on the new moon, okay? So I literally write at the top, instead of writing what month it is, I write what lunar cycle we're in. So currently we're in the new moon in Cancer lunar cycle. Hey, Napanette. Got my little kitty cats, my little inside cat, my little outside cat. With her little tracker on. Little sweet girl. Yeah, you looking at me all crazy. But I literally, thank you so much for the likes. Super appreciate it. So I literally start my dry erase calendar every single month on the new moon. So I have 4 different colors. Yes. Okay. AI summary. A women's health educator discusses lunar cycles and planning with the moon. Yes, I do, girl. Yes, I do. I'm screenshotting that. So I have a dry erase calendar where I literally, instead of putting the month at the top, I put the lunar cycle that we're in. So I start it by putting, so this lunar cycle is the new moon in Cancer. So I start by putting the new moon in Cancer at the top of the calendar. And then I have 4 different color markers right here that I use to dictate the different phases of my cycle. So if you didn't know, we have 4 phases of our cycle as women. We are not meant to be the same every single day of our life. Okay, every phase of our life, we are a different version of ourselves. Every phase of our cycle, we are a different version of ourselves, and we are meant to be. Okay, society tries to have us live like tiny men, and I don't like that. Okay, I don't like the fact that medical research is mostly only done on men and postmenopausal women. This is changing now. Okay, this is changing now, but women's health is still the most underfunded, under-researched, and understudied field in medical history. Okay, and we need to understand that. We need to talk about that. Okay, we need to make that known, because it's honestly really insane. She wants to come outside now. It's honestly really insane to me that as women, we are sold this information. Come on, Nipple. You wanted to come outside? I opened the door, girl. What are you doing? Come on. Big stretch. Come on. Yep, come on. But literally, medical research, exercise, nutrition, all of it is literally done on men and postmenopausal women, okay? A lot of times they do not research women in their cycling years. They do not research mothers. They do not add mothers to studies, okay? Because of the complex hormone fluctuations. They do not add women in our cycling years to studies because of our complex hormones, because of the hormone fluctuations that they just see as too much. We can't keep up with it. We don't know how to track that. We don't know how to... Okay, you're literally scientists. I don't understand. I don't understand what you mean. What do you mean by that? Can you explain it to me? Because why are we still giving women in their cycling years research and advice, nutritional advice, exercise advice, medical research? Why is that still being done? All right. I see new people coming in. Okay, I see new people coming in. Hit me with a 1. If you're here, if you're new here, if you've never seen my face before, hit me with a 1. Hit me with a what's up. Okay, let me know. Got my pretty little kitty cat in the sunset. Oh my goodness, she's so cute. She's such a pretty little kitty. Nipple nee. Nipple nee. She's such a pretty little kitty. But yeah, okay, back to the topic. Why are we giving women in their cycling years nutritional advice, research, exercise advice and research, and medical advice and research that has only been tested on men and postmenopausal women? Why are we not taking into account women's hormone fluctuations that literally dictate our entire life? Can we answer that? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. Women should be dosed medically, okay? If you're taking any kind of medications, you should be dosed according to where you are in your cycle. Excuse me, confirmation burp, okay? You should be dosed according to where you are in your cycle. But we're not. We're not. And you know what that causes? Do you know what that causes? Underdosing, okay? For women, we're not getting enough of what we need, okay? Nutritional advice, exercise advice, right? We are things like fasting, okay? Fasting does not work for women. Women should not be intermittent fasting, okay? And I'm going to say that with my whole chest. Women should not be intermittent fasting. Women should be eating within 90 minutes of waking up, okay? We should be getting... What is that, girl? What is that? We should be getting protein and fiber within 90 minutes of waking up as women, okay? We have to balance our blood sugar. We have to stabilize our blood sugar as women. That is how we take care of our bodies. We take care of our cycles. Thank you so much for the likes. Super appreciate it. Let me know, everybody coming in, hello. Let me know where you are in your cycle. If you are currently on your period, if you're ovulating, if you're in your luteal phase, do you even know where you are in your cycle? Okay? Do you have questions about your cycle? Do you have questions about what it means to plan your life by the moon and your cycle? Do you have questions about what it means to align your life to the lunar cycle and your womb cycle? Okay? Because there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that goes into that we just don't seem to understand. Okay? And this is why I plan my life the way that I do. Okay? I have a dry erase board. You know what? I'm going to just go back in there and show you. I'm going to just have to go show you. Because talking about it ain't enough. I got to show you. Okay, let me turn this light on. Okay. This is my dry erase calendar. Okay? This is how I plan my life by the moon and my womb. I have 4 different colors. I'm trying to get the light off of this. Okay. I have 4 different colors on this dry erase board to indicate the 4 different phases of my cycle. If you were not aware, okay, if you don't know, you have 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. The menstrual phase, which is the most obvious phase that everyone is pretty aware of, okay? We have the follicular phase, which comes after that, the ovulation phase, and then your luteal phase, which a lot of times is what we experience as our PMS phase, okay? I have this laid out on the cycle here, okay? As you can see, there is not a month up here. It is the new moon in Cancer cycle. That is what I'm basing this on, okay? This calendar starts with the new moon in Cancer. I was in my luteal phase when the new moon started. 6 days into the lunar cycle, I started my period, just as I predicted, okay? This whole calendar was set up before my period ever started because I know exactly when that happens. Okay, because I track my cycle, because I chart my cycle, because I'm paying attention and tuned into my body, all right? So I was in my luteal phase at the start of this lunar cycle. I started my period 6 days into the lunar cycle. Here I entered my follicular phase on day 7, currently on day 13, about to enter into my ovulation phase. Now, the thing that a lot of people don't understand about ovulation, we're going to go back outside now because I've showed you my calendar. Hopefully you saw it. If you're joining the live later, we'll talk about it later. But the thing that a lot of women don't understand about ovulation is the fact that ovulation has 2 phases. 2 distinct phases just within ovulation itself. Okay? So, ovulation's first phase, and this will be dictated by 2 different types of cervical fluid. So a lot of times women will call this discharge, okay? That white stuff that you see in your underwear, that white sticky stuff that we see in our underwear that everybody's like, ew, what is that? It's discharge, girl. It's not discharge. It's cervical fluid, okay? I've heard people say that it is our body's way of cleaning itself, and that is not necessarily true, okay? This is the yoni is a self-cleaning organ. It does clean itself. It is not dirty or need extra help or should smell good or whatever that we've been taught, okay, incorrectly. So say 333. Man, y'all got me up to 333 likes. That's what I'm right there. Okay. So, that white stuff that you see in your underwear that we all call discharge, that is cervical fluid. That is your body letting you know that you have just entered your fertile window. That is your body letting you know that, hey, we're getting ready to ovulate. Okay, we're preparing for ovulation. It's not happening right now because we're not there yet, but we're preparing for it. And the cool thing about the first phase of ovulation, yes, ask your cycle questions. AI is on it today, okay? Discussing women's health and the lunar cycle. Ask your cycle questions. Ask them, girl. Tell me. So the first phase of ovulation, right? When we first start to see that white sticky discharge in our underwear, this is telling you that you are phase. Okay, this is telling you that you're entering your fertile window and you are now in a space where pregnancy is possible, right? Because them little swimmers can live in our fluid for up to 5 days. Okay? And that is why I tell women all the time, okay? I'm telling you guys all the time, there's a little hummingbird coming out here. Yes, ma'am, you can come down here. I'm not going to hurt you. I just talk loud sometimes, okay? I see you up there, though. I tell women all the time, okay, that you cannot get pregnant every day of your cycle. I need you to hear me and hear me clear, okay? You cannot get pregnant every single day of your cycle like you've been told. That is a myth, and I am busting it right now, okay? We are myth busting on this live. You cannot get pregnant every day of your cycle. I said that recently in a video, and I had somebody comment and say, you can get pregnant every day of your cycle. It's just more likely during ovulation. Wrong. Super, super false. Extra, extra wrong. Okay? You cannot get pregnant every day of your cycle. It is biologically, scientifically impossible. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why. We're going to break it down right here. Okay? That's what we're doing here. I'm going to break it down for you right now of why that's not possible. Okay? Once you ovulate in a cycle, you will not ovulate again. When you ovulate, when your egg is released from the ovary, it is only viable for 12 to 24 hours. What? Yes, 12 to 24 hours. The reason that I tell women that you have a 5 to 7 day window where pregnancy is possible every month is because those little swimmers, if they get in there, they can live there for up to 5 days. 5 days. That's it, and that's all. Okay? And so we're talking about the 2 phases of ovulation right now. We're talking about the fact that ovulation itself has 2 phases. So, that first phase, about the fact that ovulation itself has 2 phases. So, that first phase, that white sticky discharge that you see in your underwear, that is your body letting you know that you are entering your fertile window. Okay? That's your body letting you know, hey, we're getting ready to ovulate. Okay? It's not happening yet because we're not there, but we're getting ready. What that cervical fluid does, that particular sticky white stuff that you get in your underwear, that cervical fluid is so important. Why it is important is because it is filtering out abnormal, lazy, unhealthy, slow-moving swimmers to make sure that they do not make it to the egg. Because why would we want that to fertilize the egg? Why would we want that? We wouldn't, right? So that cervical fluid is extremely important. And then the second phase of ovulation, we shift into that egg white, okay? That stretchy, that slippery, that wop, that juicy, okay? Very similar to arousal fluid, but not quite, okay? That's the second phase of ovulation. That is a fish highway, a swimmer highway, okay? That is what transports them to the egg, to help them reach the egg, because we filtered out all the ones we don't want. We filtered out all the unhealthy, the lazy, the abnormal, the slow moving. We filtered them out because we don't want them to reach the egg. Okay, so they were all filtered out with the first phase of ovulation, and now we're at the point where we're about to release that egg, and we want to help them get there. Okay, so they can do what they need to do, and she can make her choice, because remember, the egg chooses. Okay, this is not about the fastest one wins the race. That's so patriarchal. Okay, that's so patriarchal. Absolutely not. The egg is choosing who she wants to fertilize her. It is a choice that the egg makes. Okay, pro-choice all the way, all the time, every day. Okay, so that is why paying attention to ovulation and tracking ovulation, knowing when and if you are ovulating, is so important. Okay? Because it's not about, oh, my period's late. It's about, oh, I ovulated later in the cycle, and so now my period is delayed. It's not showing up when I thought it was going to. And sometimes, okay, sometimes your period will try to align with the moon. And maybe, honestly, maybe it's ovulation that's aligning with the different phases of the moon. Okay? Maybe it's ovulation that's aligning with the different phases of the moon and not your period. Because your period is not late. You just ovulated later in the cycle and you weren't paying attention. You weren't tracking that. So you didn't know that you ovulated later in the cycle. So you're expecting your period to show up the same time that it always does, or the same time that it did last month. And it's not. Because you ovulated later in the cycle. And there are a lot of different reasons why ovulation would be delayed. Okay? Stress being one of the biggest ones. Okay? Cortisol or stress will literally deplete progesterone. So we have estrogen and we have progesterone. Okay? That we have 3 hormones that dictate the menstrual cycle. Okay? 3 hormones that dictate the menstrual cycle. Estrogen, progesterone, and luteinizing hormone. Estrogen is rising, okay? Rising during the first half of the cycle. It peaks at ovulation, peaks around ovulation. Luteinizing hormone peaks and causes ovulation to happen. Luteinizing hormone is what releases the egg from the ovary, okay? The ovary is growing and growing and growing in the follicular phase, okay? So we have all these follicles, right? And those follicles are growing and growing and growing, and one grows the fastest, matures faster than the other ones, and that is the egg that gets released, right? We usually only release one egg during ovulation. There are certain situations where more than one egg will be released at a time, and that's when we can get twins, triplets, all these things, right? But 9 times out of 10, there's only one egg being released, okay? And ovulation is only happening one time in the cycle. Once you ovulate, you will not ovulate again in the cycle, okay? And that's why tracking ovulation is so important. And I say this all the time. I am not on birth control. I am not on birth control. I have not been on birth control. Okay? I've not been on birth control for 10 years. But I was on it for 5. I was on birth control from the time I was 15 until I was 20. Okay? So I know ball when it comes to birth control. And women do not like to hear this from me. They do not like to hear about the fact that birth control is not a treatment. It's not a fix. It's not helpful for our reproductive health concerns. Okay? That is not what we want to be receiving when we're having period-related concerns, reproductive health concerns. We do not want the immediate response to be birth control. Yeah, people don't like that. People don't like that. Oh, it helps me. Oh, it's regulating my cycle. Oh, but if I'm not on it, then I have terrible periods. It's not regulating your cycle, babe. It's not regulating your cycle because it's actually suppressing ovulation. The point of birth control, right? The purpose of birth control is in the name. That is what it does. It controls birth. It prevents pregnancy because it's suppressing ovulation. It's stopping your egg from being released. So there's no way there's no way that something that is suppressing your cycle can at the same time be regulating your cycle. That's not how that works. And I need you to understand this. I need you to hear me and hear me clear. Okay? Man, I really just be going on a roll when I be talking about this. I really do though. Like, I really just want women everywhere to understand what I'm talking about. Like, I just want you to understand that your cycle does not need assistance being regulated, okay? The symptoms that you're having are signals from your body trying to tell you that something is wrong. And when we go and we get put on birth control, the only thing that the birth control is doing is masking our symptoms. It is a Band-Aid solution that is masking our symptoms so that we don't feel them anymore. And it makes it seem like, oh, everything's cool now. My cycle's regulated. I'm good. I'm getting a period again. Okay, my periods are like 3 days and they're super light. And I get no cramps because it's not a period, babe. You're not having a period on birth control. I hate to break it to you. Okay, I really do hate to break it to you, but you are not getting a period when you're on birth control. That's not really how that works. It's what you're experiencing on birth control is called a withdrawal bleed, especially if you are on the pill specifically. What you're experiencing is a withdrawal bleed. Okay, because during the first 3 weeks of the pill pack, look at that sunset. Okay, we're gonna sit right here with the sun. The first 3 weeks of that pill pack, you're pumping your body full of synthetic hormones. Synthetic hormones, okay, that are throwing off your natural cycle because it's not a natural cycle anymore because you're suppressing ovulation. Okay? And so that week that you're taking the sugar pills, that is where you get that withdrawal bleed because you're no longer pumping your body with the synthetic hormones. And so the reason that we have that is because when they first came out with birth control and they were testing it on women were actually they were very concerned about the fact that they weren't having periods, okay? And I know I've said that before, and I've had people in my comments like, oh my God, how glorious it would be to not have a period. How great it would be to not have a period. I don't understand why. Okay, the only time that we should not be having a period is if we're pregnant, right? Or if something is wrong. So the fact that they were taking birth control and they weren't having a period, they either thought that they were pregnant and they were concerned about it because they were supposed to be taking something that would prevent that, or they thought that something was wrong because they weren't having a period. So they added the sugar pills to the birth control at the very end so that you would have the illusion of having a period. Because that's what it is it's an illusion. It's not an actual period. Okay? So, that's the thing with birth control, is we're suppressing ovulation. That's why it works so well as a birth control, as a method of preventing pregnancy, because that is what it is for. It is not for women's reproductive health concerns. It cannot, okay? It is not a treatment. It is not a solution. It is a Band-Aid that is masking your symptoms so that you feel better, right? But it's really wreaking havoc on the inside, okay? It's destroying your gut microbiome. It's suppressing ovulation, and ovulation is not only important for if you want to have a baby. Ovulation affects your brain health, your breast health, your thyroid function, your immune system, your gut microbiome, and your bone density. Why are we suppressing something that is so beneficial to our overall health just to not end up pregnant when our body literally gives us, we have a built-in birth control in our body. And it's called knowing when you ovulate. It's called confirming ovulation. It's called your fertile window. Hello? Okay? It's never made any sense to me why women are the ones on birth control. Okay? Why women are told that we can get pregnant every day of our cycle. Really think about it, right? Really, really sit back and think about it. We have a 28-day cycle. When you conceive, it takes about 2 weeks for you to even know that you have conceived. For you to even know that a pregnancy has started to form. Okay? That's why everybody says the 2 week wait, right? Because from ovulation to your period is right about 2 weeks. And that is your luteal phase. What's happening in your luteal phase? Progesterone is taking over the cycle in your luteal phase. What is progesterone? Progestation. Progesterone promotes gestation. It's literally upholding the uterine lining so that the egg can implant and start to grow. That is the purpose of that, right? Biologically, that is the purpose of that. So, where am I going with this? Hold on, my dogs are distracting me. I need to let them back out. Come on, babies. So when we're suppressing ovulation, which is in fact the most important part of the menstrual cycle, okay? A lot of people think that menstruation is the most important part, when in reality, ovulation is the star of the show, okay? Casey, hello. I'm just yapping on here. What's up, girl? What's up? But ovulation is the star of the show. Our period is just the external observation that we're having a cycle. It's the most obvious part of the cycle because it's the external part. It's literally coming out of us. It's like, hey, I'm here. Okay? But none of that happens without ovulation. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you're here. None of that happens without ovulation. Because ovulation is the star of the show. Nothing else can function without her. And the fact that so many of us spend so long on birth control suppressing ovulation, okay? Every ovulation is a deposit into your bank of health and wellness because it affects your brain, because it affects your breasts, because it affects your thyroid, your immune system, your gut microbiome, your bone density. This is why we see so many women post-menopause with things like osteoporosis. And a lot of times these women have been on birth control for decades, okay? Which means that they have not been getting any ovulations in. So I tell women all the time, especially in their perimenopause years, okay? When you hit about 35, I'm gonna need you to come off the birth control and start letting yourself ovulate. Okay, because we need to get some deposits into that bank of health and wellness. Okay, that we need it. We need it. Okay, it's really crazy to me, right? And this is what I was talking about a second ago. It's really crazy to me that women are told that we can get pregnant every day of our cycle. Okay, I've had people comment on videos that I've talked about this, and I'm just like, I don't understand where you're getting this information. My doctor told me that you can get pregnant every day of your cycle. It's just more likely during ovulation. In what world does that make sense? In what version of reality does that happen? Okay? It doesn't make any sense. There's so much misinformation. Exactly. And a lot of it comes from doctors, okay? Because doctors are literally taught a pill for every ill, and if that doesn't work, we got surgery for you. Okay? And for women's health specifically, the only solution that we are given
is birth control. We are literally, birth control is thrown at women like candy for any period-related concern, anything that has to do with the uterus or reproduction. It's all birth control. But birth control is not a solution. It's not a solution. It's not a treatment. It's a band-aid for your symptoms. It is masking your symptoms, and it's making you feel like everything's okay. And a lot of women come at me with, oh, but it's regulating my cycle. Girl, no, it's not. Girl, let me hold your hand when I say this, okay? It's not regulating your cycle because it's suppressing your cycle. But why are we giving birth control? Okay, this is another thing that I really just want to understand. Why are we giving birth control? Okay, the purpose of birth control is in its name. It is to prevent pregnancy. It is to control birth, right? To make sure that doesn't happen. That's why it works so well at preventing pregnancy, because that is its purpose. So why are we giving women something that is meant only to prevent pregnancy as a treatment or fix for a period-related health concern? Because women are told that we can get pregnant every day of our cycle, and the only solution to that is birth control. The only solution to that is birth control. Because it's our responsibility to prevent pregnancy. The burden of preventing pregnancy is solely on women. Even though, okay, riddle me this, men can get multiple women pregnant, multiple times a day, multiple times a week, multiple times a year. But women are told that, see, make it make sense to me, because it doesn't. It doesn't make sense to me. Women are pregnant for 9 months out of a year if we get pregnant, right? They're not on any kind of birth control, no. And you know, they've tried to come out with men's birth control, and men, this is so funny to me, because oh my God, they're so weak, bro. They're so weak. They have tried to come out with birth control for men, and men get the symptoms that women get on birth control. Like, their emotions get like super chaotic and crazy. They get bloated. They get all of these crazy symptoms, right? That women deal with all the time being on birth control. And they didn't want to take it. So they just quit the research on it. They just stopped because men didn't like it. Men didn't like what was happening to their bodies. So it's never made sense to me why we tell women, oh, you can get pregnant every day of your cycle, so you just have to go on birth control. But your body literally is a built-in birth control, because you can only get pregnant one time out of however long your cycle is, right? Your cycle can be anywhere from 26 to 36 days. It can be longer depending on if you have things like PMOS and all these things. But a healthy cycle is anywhere from 26 to 36 days. So out of that time period, you are only able to get pregnant within a 5 to 7 day window. And you're telling me that we're supposed to take a birth control, pump our body full of synthetic hormones all month long, and disrupt our literal microbiome, disrupt our entire health, our overall health, to prevent pregnancy that can only happen 5 to 7 days out of our entire cycle? What? It's literal insanity, if you ask me. Okay? If you ask me, it's literally insane. And this is why, okay, this is why I became a women's health educator 7 years ago. Is because I was having some symptoms. I was going through some things with my period that I didn't understand. And I was like, things are getting weird and I don't like it, okay? And so I started learning about women's health. And then 3 years after starting to learn about women's health, I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, that we now know as PMOS, polymetabolic ovarian syndrome, which the name change was absolutely so necessary because I have always understood it to be a metabolic issue that turns into a reproductive issue and not the other way around. And I've tried to explain this to people for years and nobody understands. The doctors obviously didn't understand because they know best, right? The name changed to polymetabolic ovarian syndrome. And that happened fairly recently. I think it was like May that they changed it. And the name change makes all the difference because now, instead of just being given birth control, because it was looked at as a reproductive concern because it was called polycystic ovarian syndrome. So like you have polycystic ovaries, okay? Women were getting misdiagnosed because they had and didn't have polycystic ovaries. And the fact that it's a metabolic concern, we're now understanding that it requires lifestyle and diet changes in order to heal it. And that birth control is not the solution. So the name change was super necessary and a complete game changer for women everywhere who've been diagnosed with this, okay? Because when they diagnosed me with it and they tried to give me birth control, I was like, no thank you, because that's not going to help. I've been off of birth control for a while. I do not want to go back on, okay? My husband was in complete agreement with me on that because absolutely not. But yeah, they tried to prescribe me birth control and I basically just never went back. I was like, absolutely not. I'm going to fix it myself. And reversed 99% of my symptoms. Okay. And that's on women's health. Okay. That's on women's nutrition. That's on cycle syncing. That's on literally telling time by the moon in my cycle. That is why I teach this to women. That's why I talk about this. That's why this is so important to me, is because it's real life experience of knowing the change that can happen when you understand what's actually going on at the root. Okay? My PCOS was actually activated by birth control. So there's 3 different kinds of PCOS. There's insulin resistant PCOS, which is what the majority of women have. There is post-birth control PCOS, and there's another one, and I think that one is more so to do with like androgens, like too much testosterone in the body. And they tried to tell me their reasoning behind what I had. That is a great question. Thank you so much. What symptoms was I having that made me wonder what was happening? Absolutely not too nosy. That's what we're here to talk about. Let's get into it. So, are you okay, sir? Thank you. Anyway, so the symptoms that I was having that made me think that I might have PCOS was my luteal phase felt like absolute hell, if I'm being completely frank and honest. Every time I entered my luteal phase, I could not get enough to eat. I was constantly like ragey, super tired, super fatigued. Like no amount of sleep could do anything for me. Okay. I started to gain a little bit of weight, which I mean, it wasn't really a problem, but it was something that I just kind of noticed because I was 25, like 24, 25, and I had been the same weight since high school. And then all of a sudden I'm gaining weight and I'm like, something's not right here. And my periods were getting a little irregular. So instead of them kind of like coming like clockwork, they were like a little bit later here. Like I had like a almost 40-day cycle one day and I was like, yeah, something's a little bit off. So the thing with like PCOS, PMOS, is your body can be attempting to ovulate multiple times without it actually happening. And so it can delay and prolong your cycle and make it a little bit longer and make it irregular. So that's something. And then there's also it's been so long since I've had those symptoms, so it's like kind of hard to like pinpoint exactly what it was in the moment. But I know that was like the biggest thing, is like my emotions were literally all over the place, especially my luteal phase. I was like crying for no reason. I'm super frustrated with everything and everyone at all times, and then I get my period and like feel like just the tension is just like relieved out of me. It was like so insane. But I was literally feeling like a crazy person, essentially. And I went to the endocrinologist and they tested my hormones, and I had excess testosterone. And that was, I'm trying to think of the word. That was from me being on birth control for as long as I was on birth control. Because I was on birth control for 5 years. So I got off of birth control, and then 4 years after being off of birth control is when I got diagnosed with PCOS. So they tried to give me birth control for it, and I was like, I'm definitely not going back on that, because that's kind of what caused the issue. Like, what are we doing here? They tried to tell me that my ovaries were making testosterone instead of estrogen, and I'm like, that's not actually how that works, because I had already been researching this a little bit. And I had actually been reading, so this is what like kind of like prompted that I was having these symptoms in the first place. Because like when you hear the symptoms, it's like, oh, like that's just kind of normal, like that's just PMS, or like I experienced that too. And it's like, actually, so I was reading a book called Womanhood by Elisa Vitti, and that is kind of what like the light clicked on, and I was like, oh, this might actually be something. Some more symptoms that you could see with that would be like cystic acne, like around your face, and like specifically around the jawline. I didn't have that specifically, but that's another thing. Hair growing in places that it usually doesn't, like around your chin, mustache, your lower back, like your stomach, your chest, things like that. Things where like men would grow more hair. That's also kind of an indicator of that also. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you dropped in. Thank you for being here and asking questions and liking the live. Super appreciate you. It was so good to like talk with you for a second, even though I was just kind of yapping myself and we're not actually like talking, but like it was great. I feel the energy. Okay, I feel your energy and I love it. So thank you so much. Thank you. But yeah, that is kind of what alerted me to that. And also the book In the Flow by Elisa Vitti, also those were kind of like companion books. And In the Flow kind of teaches you about cycle syncing and like living in alignment with your cycle. And then Womanhood is specifically about PCOS and how to heal that through food, nutrition, diet, exercise, all that stuff. And that's why I say, like, the research that we have right now is based on men, okay, and postmenopausal women. Women at all, women period, were not included in medical research, medical trials until 1993. Okay? And even now, it's very rare that women in their cycling years, mothers in postpartum, okay, are included in research. So a lot of the information that we're getting, nutritionally, exercise, medically, is based on men and given to us as if we are tiny men, which we're not. So, yeah, that's my live. That's what we're talking about. But this is why I do what I do. This is why I teach what I teach. This is why I share what I share. This is why I teach women to live by the moon and their cycle, because that is what I do. That is what has worked for me. That is what has reversed 99% of my PCOS symptoms and completely changed my life and created a better relationship with my body, tuned me in deeper to my intuition and my body. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and hop off here and go get some dinner because it's getting pretty late. But I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Thank you so much for joining the live. Thank you so much for being here. The sun is setting. She's beautiful. We love her. Okay. We love it. So, I love you guys. We will talk very soon. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, follow for more information on women's health and learning how to tell time.